Orange Gum.
Hello.
You are here with Wendy T and Hope Skibitsky. And today we're going to be talking all about da-na-na-na,
I
anxiety and depression.
brought my box of tissues just in case.
Yeah, no, really, though. I mean, I talk about this with you quite a bit because when I talk to you, you're often super jovial or you're high spirited or you're carrying into like, well, Hope, let's already do the resilient thing and talk about the good thing that you've gleaned from this. And I'm like, I'm not ready. In a mad moment, and then I'll like message you back or call you and be like, sorry, I'm being such a pill. Like I don't need to be so pissed.
I know, but you equally have to like talk with me when I'm all snot bubbles. So,
Right, right,
I feel
right.
like, well, both of us are resilience trainers. We have a lot of experience, and I think we both think instinctively in terms of resilience. But I think that anxiety and depression are two different things, even though we use those terms pretty interchangeably at times. I think that even though I think in terms of resilience frequently, it doesn't mean that I am exempt from having anxiety or depression. And so I think because I feel like I'm so well versed in resilience, I get frustrated that I don't bounce back from things as immediately as I expect that I should. Like when I lost Capito, I was frustrated that I know better. I know how to like work through this. And why isn't it happening as fast as my timeline that I expect it to be, you know?
Yeah,
And
I
so
mean, seriously, like we all have this great idea of how we would behave or react if something happened to us. But until the day that something happens to you, like you don't really know that that's what will happen. Uh, I mean, there are things you can train your way into and train for, but most of us don't train for life, right? We don't train for the everyday experiences and especially things that maybe we haven't encountered before. And so I think that us as resilience trainers have probably often felt like we've worked our way through things with people so much that, oh, this should just be second nature. And y'all, I'm telling you, fully over disclosure moment, Batman, I suck at this for a lot of times. I mean, I come back and I do a lot of reflection. So I do often take a look at how I behaved and am like, could I have done that better? Sure. But in the moment, I'm not always good at that.
no, I agree. I think again, walking through different moments. Okay, so there's just that element of like I want to control all of the things.
Yeah. I know that.
And life just keeps giving me chances to improve.
He's proving that we have. I
Right.
think we've mentioned that on every episode.
I know. And so I'm like, what lesson am I supposed to be learning here? Because you keep giving me chances to do it.
Right. But let's talk definitions real quick, because you said we often affiliate those things, anxiety and depression, together when they probably um, are not even as closely related as people like to lump them in to be. And let's start with saying we are not mental health professionals, right? I am not a mental health professional. But we have to be able to recognize when there are things we can do ourselves, like in a swimming analogous, like when can my floaties or my donut inner tube suffice? And then when do I actually need some kind of higher education in the form of a mental health provider to get me through something that I am just unable to manage myself?
That's such a great point because I mean, I've spent so much time, I spent a career helping people find resources that they need when they need it. And to be honest, there's like a global shortage on providers in this area. And so where we can help ourselves at the appropriate level can improve, our ability to find ways to, have people get the appropriate level of care where they need it. Because sometimes, there are people who are going right to the highest level of care, like the emergency room visit for when I need a Band-Aid.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so,
If I can give myself a Tylenol for a fever, let me try that before I call an ambulance and use a resource that could be used for an actual emergency.
right.
Right.
And so, it's very there are times when it's difficult to delineate between those things, you know, and
Yeah.
sometimes I'm not in the right space to know the difference between.
Yeah, but just like in Cash Cab, if any of you used to watch that show, you climb in a cab and the guy gives you money if you can answer these questions. You can and should phone a friend,
Yeah. Mhm.
you know? And so this is the environment in which I live, right? When I feel like there's something I can't get on the other side of, I'm like, okay, I need support. I either need my other, I need my sister, or I need my sister from another mister. And so there's a whole lot of let me call in the cavalry because I am not myself. But
Mhm.
why? Why do we care? Why are we talking about anxiety and depression? Right? Not just because we're like, ooh, different topic, but because I think it's important for us to tell the truth about who we are, and who we are is sometimes messy. And so even some of the people that you've met that are like super professional or look like they have it all together, we broached that subject a little bit in part 2, the grass is greener, when we're talking about, you look at somebody else and you just make these assumptions that
Yeah,
everything makes sense.
life is just hard,
Life is hard.
and life is hard for all of us. I don't think anybody comes out unscathed.
That's
And
right. Nobody gets out of this alive.
right. And so and I generate a lot of our topic ideas based off of what comes in the inbox and what people ask us to talk through. And what people are like, man, this is something that I'm struggling with. Can you help? Or like, can you talk about this? Or I have to go to this thing and it's really difficult. You know, it's a lot of heaviness to bear for people, you know, that, you know, so those things come into the inbox. But there's also things that you and I talk about. You know, I feel like life is just hard. And so I mean, I don't get a lot of sleep, and people know this about me. I have this like irrational thought about like if I leave the house and I might die when I'm outside of the house, that somebody might think I live like a slob. So my house is almost entirely immaculate, you know, because I have this irrational fear that people will think that I live like a slob. So you could like eat off of my floors, for example.
Clean underwear theory, right? 100%.
Right? And I know this to be true of you. And I'm like, stop telling me about the things that you clean because now it's in my head and I can't unthink it, you know?
Yeah, well,
Because nobody I know gets under their bed and cleans the baseboards.
Justin's always like, Hope, if it's so hard, like we could always hire somebody. I'm like, ew, nobody's ever going to clean my house the way I want my house clean.
So, you know, things I was at the international convention and I have spoken in front of thousands of people before, but like the people that I was sitting with, they legit saw me like putting on deodorant right before I walked up there, you know, like I'm like, this, those are the
Yeah.
things that give me anxiety, and people think it's effortless. And they're like, well, you do such a good job with this, but they're, you know, I have all of these feelings that bubble up, and I know they sound trivial when we can talk about it right now. And there are people that have much the other various things that give them anxiety and they sound more significant, but those are things that give me a lot of anxiety. There are other things that we don't have to talk about here.
Yeah. Yeah. So anxiety though, I mean,
Maybe the tissue.
anxiety is like, it's that anxiousness, right? And while I know I have heard people say things like, oh, I have OCD. And what they mean is they probably have an obsessive compulsive personality disorder that makes them like line all their spoons up inside of their flatware drawer or coordinate the colors of the shirts in their closet. That doesn't necessarily equate to the mental health diagnoses of obsessive compulsive disorder. And so, not to play lightly on the actual clinical definition of anxiety and or depression, it is very possible, in the Hope Skibitsky opinion, to have like anxiety where you have like chest pain, you can't breathe, you're feeling like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this thing. What do I do, Wendy, when I feel like,
Right,
what do I do?
right. And so the various ways that I overcome some of those things frequently involve phone a friend. Frequently.
Yeah.
Um, you know, some other areas are like where do I refocus my attention?
Mhm.
And we've talked about this a little bit about how much bandwidth do I have to draw from to put myself in a good space. And so that I need to be in a good enough space to be able to draw from that.
Right. Because sometimes though that's empty. And just like whenever you say things like, I just know that my significant other, my whomever is supposed to be there for me. But imagine if all I ever did was like cast my hard feelings or my anxiety or those things on them. Like eventually they're going to run out of bandwidth to help. And so I think like the conversation you and I were having before we started, it's important when you're going to need to call on someone for that emotional support that you've invested in that relationship so that that individual has the ability. I think it's the
They want to
need,
pour
the
into
want,
you.
the care, yes,
Yeah.
to provide you to the support that you need.
Mhm.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, sometimes you can rely strictly on strangers. Sometimes it feels really, really cathartic to be able to, you know, meet that person at the support group that you've never met before and just kind of offload your world's troubles because you don't have to have a commitment to somebody to to get the support that you need when you don't have it for yourself.
Yeah, and sometimes the benefit of that is that that's somebody who is going to prioritize you uh, for what you need,
Mm.
and not because they care so much about you and wanting to like protect you. They're going to get you what you need,
Well, not
and
only that,
sometimes,
to protect you, sometimes I might give you support by leading you down a path of what I would need, or I would give you support by leading you down a path of where how quickly I think you should get it together and get back on track, right? Where a disinterested party is good for that is that sometimes their only vested interest is supporting you in today and they have no, preconceived notions of what they need from you, that it's all about you.
right, but I mean, like they don't necessarily need to sustain a relationship, and so they don't, they're interested in like the get well. And so, whereas like my good friend sometimes is like, wanting so much for me to be cared for, you know, and that's what I mean by sometimes like that third
Yeah.
party is like the, you know, here's the information that you need to like fix this situation.
And the same thing serves with depression, right? Because even though you may not have a clinical diagnosis of depression, that doesn't mean aren't days when, like, literally you just aren't having it. You can't, you cry. I will tell you sometimes with me, I just need like a pint of ice cream. I'll say a half gallon because that's what I actually mean, but a pint of ice cream and a warm blanket and something that's going to make you cry. Justin would come downstairs and see me like on the iPad watching these like soldier come home videos and I've got tears streaming down my face and he's like, "Are we fighting?" And I'm like, "No, I just needed to get it out." He's like, "What?"
Yeah. I think, sometimes when it's like kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? And it's not even anything, but it was the one thing that just pushed you over the edge. And
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like I just need to get it out. But you know
yeah.
what's not helpful? What's not helpful when you're already feeling down is more down, right? And so like one, alcohol is a downer.
Yeah.
It is. So if you take alcohol, there's a chance you're just going to feel even worse. But laying down, I mean, physics says bodies in motion tend to stay in motion. So laying down may or may not be helpful. It might be a thing you can't help at the moment, but doing that long term is probably not good. But also, listening to sad music when you're already feeling sad is not helpful. This is where Cyndi Lauper and Whitney Houston come in.
And so I've never listened to the script ever, not like ever, because that will get you committed. I mean, I love their music, but honestly, like
No,
no.
you need ludicrous. You need ludicrous when you're having a tough day. Yeah.
You need some Jordan Childs kind of energy, like
Yes, honestly. And so, I mean, seriously, I often think about like, what is it that I do when I just can't do anymore. And mine is physical. Like I I get outside, I go get in the Texas sun, I move rocks, I dig holes, I break things, I spray paint. Like my yard has never looked better than on the days when I just really need to get it out.
So I think in some of my really low points, I have done substantive volunteer work just because I
Mhm.
think that helps with perspective. And, I feel like I'm getting back and it helps me reframe. I think spending time with my friends is helpful. Um, I like to watch all my girly movies.
Hold on,
When
wait, like what? Like what?
This Means War is one of my go-tos. The Proposal is one of my
Oh, the
go-tos.
proposal's a good one.
Yeah, and I mean, Legally Blonde, I can recite that backwards and forwards.
Girl, I'm thinking like 90s. I'm or late 80s, 90s. Like I'm thinking like Mannequin and Overboard and
My Cousin Vinny.
yeah, like a lot of those like just
Mhm.
feel good, good outcome kind of things. Or I don't know, anything Hallmark. My husband, well,
Oh,
Justin
you
always
only
gets
need to watch
really,
one of those.
huh?
You only need to watch one of those, and then you've
One,
seen
but
them.
that's what Justin said because you always know the plot, the theme, the outcome. I'm like, right. So it's predictable. And you know it's always going to end with somebody falling in love and it's good.
Yes, yes. Small town, needs
Yep.
rescuing. It's at Christmas, right?
Yep. Last Christmas, I saw the This Is My Hallmark movie watching sweatshirt, and I was like, oh, I think this is a gift I might actually want.
Yes. If Hope ever is in need of cheering up, then I'm just sending her Garrett.
Oh, my baby boy. You guys, I know he is like a legit adult, like a legit adult. Like I was already in my second marriage when I was his age, but I can't. Like he is just my fave little human, and he's not little. Anyhow, yeah, so for real.
I mean, what she means by that is very tall.
He is very tall. So, what about at work though? Like, not all of us have the privilege of having enough time off to take the day off. Not all of us have the ability to just decide to take the day off. Sometimes you have to give, advance notice, or whoever got to put in time last gets to go first, kind of thing. Who knows what the situation might be? Like, what do I do though when I have to go to work and today is just not it? Today is not todaying and I am going to get in my own way. Like there are times when my mouth needs that whole Hannibal Lecter mask thing. Because when I'm not feeling it, like verbal pimp slaps is what my brain goes to first. And I know it's not a good habit, right? So what do we do?
So, I mean, when I'm like ready to shake someone like a Etch a Sketch, right? There's two alternatives. One, first, always it's the screenshot sent over via safe texting, right? Like never on Teams, never in a work email.
Ever, ever, wait,
No,
ever.
government can't be trusted. So you immediately get the screenshot of how hateful I am. And then there's the alternative, which is like, 5-second dance party. So
Hey, the bend and snap works every time.
yeah. Yes, so like bad vibes out, good energy in, like, okay.
Yeah. But like you want to be that person that has your door open so that others can come talk to you. But sometimes it's worth noting to your teammates, to your partners, to your subordinates, like, I'm not feeling it today. I just don't know why. I'm trying to collect myself. I'm just going to keep my door closed. If you absolutely need me, please reach in. But today, if you could just give me some space. I think one, it's honest, it's vulnerable, it's respectful, but it also will preserve relationships because it lets people know that you're not just being closed off for the sake of being closed off. You need that time. And we
like
do
if you
sometimes
bump if
just
you
need.
bump me, all the coffee will come spilling out kind of day. And so like I want to prevent that. So like, can you just give me a minute?
Yeah. And the same is true with your other. Like when you come home and that you remember that TED talk, Sean Aker, The Happiness Advantage, my
I
favorite,
do.
right? And so he talks about how
I
sometimes
like to I like to share his information all the time. Go ahead, proceed.
So what I loved about it was he talked about like the you've had a long day, you have a lot going on, you want to come home and just like completely word vomit all the frustrations of the day. Or somebody's like, early in the morning your car wouldn't start, and then no matter how many good things happened during the day, at the end of the day it was like, oh, this day sucked. Now, did the day really suck, or was that just the only thing your brain would focus on? And so he talks about the three good things, which lots of different people in a lot of different spaces have different names for this same exercise, but it's like wiring your brain to think of three positive things that happen during the day. Could be very, very small. Like think of the number of times we don't applaud our vehicle for starting when it should start. Like, but we would all be really pissed if it didn't, right?
Yeah.
But thinking of three good things while you sit in your parking spot out front of your house or apartment and you just take a big deep breath and you go inside having tried to reset your brain to be focused more on the positive. I mean, that's helpful before you go to bed. It's helpful to get your day started right. And then eventually you can rewire your brain to try to go to that first.
Yeah, reframing
Yeah.
and
And so,
finding it good, right? And so I think that's where, we like when we think about like our resilience techniques, those are it comes like first thing to mind, right? I have
yeah,
a lot of great things in my life. And so that's pretty instinctive for me. And when that starts to like run on empty, then now where do I go?
yeah. And so for the anxiety piece, though, a couple of things that I mean, I have seen a mental health provider on more than one occasion. I see mental health providers even today. I have my own laundry list of hopes issues. So again, I probably am in zero position to tell anybody else like how to do better at something, because I am not the world's do betterist at this. But Wendy's cringing because I'm making up vocabulary words. But I I know certain things that have been offered to me that I really have found useful. And a couple of things that I have found useful, one is regular exercise, but two, doing things to kind of keep my brain healthy, busy at things. But I also found it very useful, positive self-talk, like being your own hype man, walking yourself through some of the things that you're like, okay, this might be really hard right now, or I'm really scared right now, and I'm not sure how I'm going to do this thing right now. But here's some examples of things that I have done that were really hard that I did really good at. Kind of that positive self-talk to kind of like bring yourself back up to stand, like to be your own hype man.
I agree. And if you need a hype person, then I'm your girl.
Oh, I'm glad to play that game too. Like, call me. I would love to tell you all the good things about you so that we can restring your necklace. Because clearly you got some beads tangled if you're thinking you're doing wrong, right? Like,
Uh,
yeah. And I just think it's important for us to know that there are things we could do. There's band-aids and ointments in our own, mental health toolkit that we can use before the big thing. But the big thing should be a consideration if you are constantly having to get yourself on the other side of this.
I used to share this example because I think it's easy. Like if I look at your situation, it's easy for me to see where you're not seeing it clearly. And when you're looking at mine, it's easy for me. And so if anybody's seen the Titanic and you're looking at, Jack's like hanging on the edge of that, door or whatever it was. And so, we're all like, there's plenty of room, like just get on. But we're looking at it on this big screen from over here. And from his perspective, there wasn't room, because like when you're in that moment, you just see this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody sitting over here is like, we see all the whole picture.
That's
You know,
right. It's that old adage of missing the forest for the trees, because you're so close to the tree, you can't see the whole of the forest.
And the other thing I think is that sometimes when we're in that moment, we likely, I mean, if you're like the rest of probably almost all of us, you're not getting much sleep when you're in these moments. And so that also just shades our perspective and we can't see. And
Yeah.
so I was just sharing another story when I was teaching. I had somebody send me a message like, "Hey sister, can you talk?" And I'm like, "Of course." Well, I sent a message to his instructor like, "Hey, anything like you know of?" And he's like, "Well, he looked terrible this morning," which is uncharacteristic. So I met with him and he had a loss on Monday, family member, loss on Tuesday, family member. And then that morning, his son, something terrible had happened with his son. And I was like, why are you still here? And he's like, well, I mean, this whole laundry list of things, but 3 days in a row of things that had impeded his ability to think clearly. He's not sleeping. And so anybody else would have looked at that situation clearly. And in his moment, he's not sleeping. He's not seeing it clearly at all. If he had been in that situation, looking at it for somebody else, he would have seen it differently. And
Yeah.
so it's just so much easier when we're looking at somebody else's, and it's very difficult when it's our own.
Yeah, it's like that game Mad Gab. I don't know if you guys have ever played it, but I recommend it. It's a good party game for a lot of people. But there's a card that has like a bunch of jumbly words on it that when you first read it, you're like, what the Sam Hill is that? But when you actually read those jumbly words together, the people across from you are like, oh, yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. But you can't hear it because your brain is reading it, right? And so because you're in it, because you're there, you're focused on it, you can't see the thing it actually is. And I think that's really great point you make, is that if you're in it, sometimes it's hard to see the what would be an easy like thought to why are you here, why are you not resting, or why are you not getting help, or why are you not
Mhm.
100
Yeah.
other things.
So who's our trusted circle? Who do we reach to? How do we find the things that add value in our life to help us get on the right path to walk through it? And how do we start normalizing that life is just sometimes hard, and it's okay to say, like, I'm okay, or I'm really just not okay right now, but it will be okay.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
I recognize that this is a low period, that everything is okay. I'm just not feeling my best right now.
Yeah. Well, you know how like sometimes people don't necessarily know what right would look like because they've not been through this thing. And so where they might be able to take a look at somebody else and see it, even if they've never been through it, looking at me, it's different because it's me, right? Like it's just like if you see me doing something and it's easy for me to say, well, no, it's different. You're like, no, it's really not different. But it feels different because it's me. But there's that old African proverb, right? That's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And if I were to tie two different thoughts together, Stephen Covey's go fast analogous was always like, you can be going 99 miles an hour, but if you're headed in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I think I'm going in the right direction if I'm going 99 miles an hour, you know.
Sure. Or you don't care because you're driving a fun, fast car. So, I mean, but when we talk about anxiety and depression, like I just want to make sure I cap this for one last thing that I have found helpful that might be helpful for people is mindfulness. And when we learned master resilience training, there's mindfulness, which is when your mind is just so full, so many things are happening. Yeah, you can't focus on anything and you're not being productive and thereby are potentially being more destructive.
Mhm.
And then there's mindfulness, which is like grounding, like you find a way to think of the real that you can touch. Like my feet are on the ground, I can smell the air, the chill outside is on my neck. Things to kind of bring you back to the present, to center yourself so that you can find a thing that you can do something about. And then you have a place to focus. And we get back to Wendy's beginning where we started here. Where do I have control? Which can sometimes give a ton of personal empowerment, is to know what I can put my finger on and do something about.
I would prefer for it to be all the things.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. Yeah, because I mean, I have struggled with this a lot in my life. I tell people, hey, focus on the areas you can control. And then I find myself spinning out of control on a thing that I can do absolutely nothing about.
Mhm.
So yeah, I get it.
I do too. And I feel like just based on the feedback that we get and the people that reach out, this is not uh this is not just between us, right? It's just
Yeah.
like, other people have it's something that people don't largely talk about. It's becoming more normal, but I think we still live in a culture where everybody's kind of sharing their best ofs, and their highlight reel. And, so then you start to feel very isolated and alone when you don't feel like you're living a life that is a highlight reel.
Yeah. But you and I were speaking before we started, like you're the person that likes to live in the positive. Like you often try to quickly find the positive. You want to stay in the positive. And sometimes it's exhausting to me because I'm like, Wendy, I just want you to be upset with me because I'm upset right now. Like we'll look for the positive in 5 minutes. Just give me the 5 minutes to be upset. And I want you to just sit with me and let me be upset. And then there's the 1 or 2 times in the whole time I've ever known you that you were in the upset that I couldn't shake you out of. And one, that's scary for me and it's hard for me and I want to cry with you. But two, it's perfectly normal. Like, even if you're the person that is always looking for the positive, the day that you fall off the positive train doesn't mean you can never get back on it again. It just means that it was your turn and you need to take a break.
So, work in progress for all of us.
All of us.
Mhm.
So we could talk about this all day, and obviously we can re-explore if there's anything that you guys want to send us in that we can talk about on how you'd like us to pull a thread on this sweater, maybe.
Mhm.
But I think we are at the end of our time.
We are, but I want to just like share one tiny little tidbit in like the 12 seconds we have left.
Do it.
That, like sometimes you actually medically need to get checked for your hormone levels. And I know that sounds like crazy when you're coming from like a female perspective, but it's reality. There's, actual like medical things happening in our bodies that need to be checked.
100%, but men too. You could have low T or any one of those other things. Your doctor is probably best served to tell you those things, but hormones will change a person.
That's right.
For real. Okay. So if you want to send us a thought, an idea, what you thought of this show or anything, obviously you can comment. But you can also send us an email, orangegumpodcast@gmail.com. You can look at all of our episodes at orangegumpodcast.com. You can check us out on YouTube if you want to watch the video, and you can listen wherever it is you listen. But no matter what, we're glad you tuned in and we look forward to seeing you next time.
All right. See you guys later.
Bye, y'all.